Hi, it's my great pleasure to welcome you in this lesson about an interesting and greatly underestimated opening e4 b6 for black. It's also known as Owen's opening. I used to play it in Blitz games and I got really good results. Also, some time ago I've published a lesson about b3 opening for white, and a lot of people reported their good results after applying. So I thought to myself, why not to prepare an identical weapon for you when you're playing black. Okay, here we go. e4, b6. That's what we'll talk about. Many players consider this opening as an incorrect line, because black somewhat neglects the center. However, it's not the case. In fact, it's one of the so-called hypermodern openings. Well, to be honest, this hypermodern concept is very old. It has been stated by Nimzovich many years ago. Yeah, we should struggle for the center, that's right, and there are two ways how this can be done. One way is a classical way to place your pawns in the center, and another way is to take control over the central squares with your minor pieces. That's what we're gonna do in this opening e4 b6. And generally this idea is used in many modern openings like Alekhine defense with e4 knight f6, like King's Indian defense, Pug defense with the move g6. By the way, logically, the first move b6 should be just as good as g6, which is pretty popular nowadays. Also, it's used in Nimzo defense and in Queen's Indian defense. By the way, the black setup of his pieces in the opening e4 b6 is really very similar to Queen's Indian defense. Also, black plays b6, then bishop b7, and later on black often places his dark square bishop onto b4. And this is exactly the setup you will play in the opening e4 b6. In that case, that would be even more effective for black, because then you can attack and possibly capture the white's pawn onto e4. The black's general plan in e4 b6 opening also reminds me of a Grunfeld defense. There also black spends his first moves to fianchetto his bishop, and in the meanwhile white sets a pawn center. It looks like this. So, black got a powerful bishop on a long diagonal, which plays a major role in the whole black's plan. It looks at the white's pawn onto d4, and after that, black moves up his other forces to increase his pressure onto this pawn onto d4. Thus black plays c5, knight c6, and in the future, maybe bishop g4, pinning the white's knight. And also this is very similar to the black's plan in e4 b6 opening. Let's go there. In this case, black realizes very similar setup, just realized on an opposite queen on the queen side. Here black also places his bishop on a long diagonal, and it takes aim at the white's pawn onto e4. Later on, black is planning to bring more and more pieces to attack and possibly destroy the white center, and particularly the e4 pawn. I hope you already can see that this opening e4 b6 is not as incorrect as most players think. Yeah, it's a little bit uncommon, but this is rather an advantage. You'll be able to drag your opponent into an unknown territory, forcing him to get out of a book, to think independently, to spend more time and make mistakes. Okay, now let's have a closer look at the following variations. After e4 and b6, white has a wide range of options. We can't analyze them all, but it's unnecessary. If you understand the black's general concept, his typical setup of his pieces and his following plans for the opening and middle game, then you'll play against any replies of your opponent easily. And that's why first of all we'll discuss this opening in general, and after that I'll show you all the main variations. So first we'll talk about generalities and we'll focus on black's moves and ideas. Okay, white plays something like d4. Your second move is obviously bishop b7. White should develop his e4 pawn somehow. Okay, now we know that black needs to increase his pressure onto this pawn onto e4. Normally black can do it with the move knight f6, and also in the future pretty often black plays bishop b4, pinning the white's knight onto c3. Right in this position, I recommend that you start from the move e6, because it's the most flexible option black can play. Then on the next move you can decide whether to play knight f6 or bishop b4, depending on the situation. If there is a white's knight on the c3 already, then it makes sense to play bishop b4. That's a quite good situation for you. You make pin on this knight, you start putting pressure on the white's position, you increase pressure on the e4 pawn, so all in all that's quite advantageous situation for you, and if possible you should play bishop b4, making this pin. When there is no knight on the c3, if white does something else, then bishop b4 move obviously makes no sense. White would just play c3, and in that case you should start from knight f6. Very often you'll play both moves in a certain order, maybe knight f6 first and then on the next move bishop b4, pinning the white's knight. Okay, right now you have finalized the first step of your plan. Remember, you are going to struggle for the center by attacking it with your minor pieces. You may be wondering, what about the b8 knight? Really now it's the only minor piece which doesn't attack white's center. The problem is we don't have a good square for this knight. If you place it on c6, it would close a diagonal for your bishop, and we don't want that. That's why usually black postpones a development of this knight, and it will join the party a bit later. And nevertheless, there is one interesting trick I'd like to share with you. Now I'll create an imaginary situation, let's say something like this. Please don't take me wrong, I don't advise that you play knight c6 right here, I just want to show you an idea. In some of the situations like this, when white has a bishop on the d3, you can go knight c6 attacking the pawn, and after white protects it, knight goes to b4, attacking the bishop. Now you can see the white's problem. He can't retreat with the bishop because it must keep protecting the e4 pawn. And that's how, by making this maneuver knight c6 to b4, you can exchange the white's powerful bishop and get advantage of two bishops. Once again, of course I don't advise that you play it right here. But in some other positions, this may work for black, and of course you may and should use this idea in a suitable situation. Okay, now let's get back to our main position. So first we go b6, secondly bishop b7. On the next move you play e6, making a flexible choice for you in the future. Then you go something like knight f6 or bishop b4 or both of them. Let's say white plays something. And now the first stage of your plan has been realized successfully. You've placed your pieces on inactive positions and you're taking aim at the white center and particularly the e4 pawn. Anyway, white will do something to keep his center protected, and after that you will need to move up reserves and start undermining white's center with your pawns. You can play d5 for this purpose, sometimes c5, and sometimes, occasionally, even f5 may work for black. Which pawn move to choose? It's hard to give you a single answer because it depends on a concrete situation. The most logical move for black is certainly d5. It corresponds to your bottom line, to attack the white's pawn onto e4. And now white has a choice, he can either take or push his pawn forward. If white has to take on to d5, it means that black accomplished his plan successfully. The white center is destroyed, and black got an active play. You can take on d5 with a knight or even with a queen, bringing the queen into action, and here you have an active play and black has no problems at all. An advancement e5 is a more ambitious way for white, and that's what we should think about more precisely. Now, of course, you need to move your knight, and certainly you will prefer to move it forward onto e4. From this square, the knight controls a lot of squares in the white's camp, which is pretty unpleasant for your opponent, and right now we're making use of the pin on the white's knight onto c3, and you can see that already white starts experiencing little troubles. Usually, if you can move your knight onto e4 and get some benefit out of it, it means that you're doing really well and everything is good for you. If you can't move your knight forward onto e4, or if white can very easily push it away after that, then you probably have to move it back onto d7, and this is a bit modest and sad decision for black, although it's possible, but I don't recommend that you play such a position, and in that case, if d5 move does not work for you very well, because you can't move the knight to e4, then it's better to switch to another pawn onto mine. You can push c5. If you can't attack the white's pawn e4, then you'll switch to another pawn onto d4. On the next move, you can increase the pressure on the d4 pawn by playing knight to c6. You can do it straight away or after an exchange of the pawns onto d4. This is also a pretty good and promising way, and you can see that now it's a good time to bring your b8 knight into action. Okay, now let's make a little intermediate conclusion. First of all, in an opening, you develop your minor pieces, putting pressure on the white center and especially on the white's pawn onto e4. For this purpose, you play a bishop b7, knight f6, and also you develop your bishop onto b4 to eliminate a defender of the white center, the knight onto c3. After that, the first stage of your plan is finished, and next you need to undermine an opponent's center with your pawn. Here you'll choose mainly between d5 and c5 moves depending on a situation. Also, I'd like that you pay attention to one interesting thing. You play black and you start attacking right from the first moves, which is very good for you. Next, if you're able to destroy the white center, or at least to trade off one of the white's pawns, it'll mean that you accomplished your plan successfully, you neutralized the only white's advantage, and after that you'll get an initiative position and you'll continue playing actively. This is the general concept and general setup of your forces. And now we'll analyze the concrete variations in greater details. We'll start from the bottom line and then we'll analyze side variations. e4, b6, d4, bishop b7. Now the e4 pawn has been attacked and white needs to protect it somehow. Now there are two main ways for white. He can play bishop d3 or knight c3. And these are two main variations we have in this opening. The most common move is knight c3 and most of your opponents will play this move. At the same time, we may say that it's not the most precise idea. Well, it's hard to say that knight c3 is a mistake, of course it's not. But nevertheless, it gives additional possibilities for black. Because as we know, in the future you can make a pin by your bishop with bishop b4 move. So you play e6. Here white will play something, let's say knight f3. Okay, now you've got a choice. You can play knight f6 or bishop b4. As you're aware, normally we should start from bishop b4 if possible. And in this position, we should do it as well. Now you can see the reason. If you go knight f6 right now, then white can easily push e5. And after knight d5 or knight e4, it will be only an exchange and black doesn't gain any benefits. It's not a problem for black, but anyway, we can do something more aggressive. That's why we should start from bishop b4, making a pin on this knight, and now black is going to capture the pawn onto e4. That's why white needs to protect it. And the only normal way for white is to play bishop d3. Once again, right now we're focusing on the main line because it will allow you to understand all main ideas easily. And later on, we'll go to side variations. Okay, black certainly continues his plan, and we play knight f6. Once again, the e4 pawn has been attacked. Now black is ready to capture it, right away or after an exchange on the c3. And that's why white needs to protect this pawn somehow. And now you can see the difference, comparing this variation with an immediate knight f6 move. Because now if white pushes his pawn to e5, you will play knight e4 or knight d5, and it's not just an exchange because you start attacking white. That's why we started from the move bishop b4. Okay, this situation is good for black. That's why it's better for white not to move his center, but to protect it with the move queen e2. Okay, this position is already familiar to us, and here black can and should play d5. It works pretty well, so why not to play it? That's why we go d5, attacking the e4 pawn once again. If white takes onto d5, it eases the black's position, and there will be no problems for black, so let's have a look at more aggressive move e5. Now black goes forward, goes inside with playing knight e4, and white needs to care about his knight on the c3. The only logical move to protect it is a move bishop d2. After that, however, we can trade off the bishop, getting an advantage of two bishops, and neutralizing one of the white's active pieces. So we can take there, it's very good for us. White takes with the queen. And now a move which comes to our mind first of all is a move c5. That's a possible move, and you may play it, but after that, if white plays a3, then sooner or later you'll have to trade your bishop on this knight on the c3 because you have no other prospects for this bishop. And that's why I think that maybe c5 is not the best idea for black, although, as I said earlier, you may play it, and that's okay. Anyway, before playing c5, you can make one preparation move. You can move your bishop back to e7. It already served well for black. It helped you to trade off the white's dark square bishop and to undermine the white center. And on the next move, after any move of white, you will push c5. Now, if white makes something ordinary, like castling, you will play c5. On the next move, you'll go knight c6, and white starts experiencing problems with his center. If you trade off that pawn onto d4, then the e5 pawn will become unprotected, and you'll be able to put pressure on it with knight c6, queen c7, maybe f6 in the future, and so on. Really, you have two bishops, you have strong center, the white central pawns are rather objects for your attack, and everything is very good. Also, sometimes you will win games after the white's move knight e2. Actually, I've played a lot of games like this in a blitz game. In order to protect the d4 pawn, many opponents will play knight e2, which seems to be very natural, but unfortunately it's losing because you can go c4, capturing the bishop. I bet you'll win some of the games in this way. You can see that in this position, although white played very natural moves, he already experiences some problems. And that's why a more prudent guy, instead of castling, will go knight e2, preparing a defense of his center, and after your move c5, he can play c3, keeping his pawns in the center. Next, you will castle, white will do the same, and here you can make a very important move bishop a6. In fact, you can see that we got something very similar with the French defense. The pawn structure in the center is really very similar, exactly the same as in the French defense. But you got it in a very favorable modification to you, because first of all, you have traded the white's dark square bishop, which usually plays an important role in the white's attack on the king side. Now there is no such an idea for white. Additionally, you already have solved your main trouble in a French defense, a passive light square bishop. Here you placed it onto a6, and on the next move most probably you'll trade it on the white's light square bishop on the d3, and thus we can say that black has no problems at all. In the future, after an exchange of bishops, let's say white plays something, you exchange the bishop, then you go knight c6, then you play rook c8, you can operate on the c-file, and of course you can keep attacking the white's central pawns. You put pressure on the white's pawn onto d4, in the future you can push your b-pawn forward to b5 and b4, maybe somewhere in the future you can play f6 and undermine head pawn in the white's pawn chain, and all in all, your position is very well protected, very solid, and you have good possibilities for an active play in the future. This is the main line, and as you can see, it's quite favorable for you. We have observed the main line, and now let's have a look at some of the side variations. So we go e4, b6, d4, bishop b7, knight c3, e6, knight f3, bishop b4, bishop d3, knight f6, queen e2. In order to protect the e4 pawn, we go d5, e5, knight e4. Okay, here it is. In the main line, white played bishop d2, and this is a normal move to protect his knight onto c3. Some time ago, white found an interesting idea to sacrifice the c3 pawn. He can go with a simple castling in order to save his dark square bishop. And after knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, and rook b1, yeah, white lost a pawn, but he saved both of his bishops, and he's waiting for your castling. After that, white will be able to start a pretty strong attack on the king side. Most of his forces are looking there, and then his gambit may be quite dangerous for black. However, there is one interesting trick which you need to know. Instead of going to the king side, you simply should move your king to the queen side, and then everything is fine. So you start from knight c6, developing the knight and attacking pawn on the d4. White plays bishop e3, then you play queen d7, and on the next move you castle long. After that, everything is really great for you. First of all, you've got an extra pawn, you still have an active position and you put pressure on the white center. Your queenside position is very well protected and it's really difficult for white to get any progress there on the queenside. Although he has a semi-open b-file, but your b6 pawn is very powerful. So there will be no chance for white for making and organizing an attack against your king. In the future you can also push f6 to attack the white center and everything is just great. Before we move on, let me ask you one question. How do you think, will your opponents be aware of all these variations in the opening e4 b6? I bet no. Most likely they will know very few lines in this opening, and very often your opponent's opening knowledge will be finished right on the first move, right after your move b6. Therefore, you will be much better prepared in an opening stage, while your opponent will have to think hard, spend time and make mistakes. So let me congratulate you with this great fact. Okay, let's move on. So d4, bishop b7. Okay, let's first take a look at knight c3, e6. He plays something. Bishop b4. Another advantage of this system is that your moves are pretty standard all the time. So no matter what your opponent plays, you will just set up this position for your forces and then will realize a well-known plan to attack the white center. Queen e2, d5. Okay, we already know the line e5, knight e4. With the help of that active knight in the central square, black got a very active position and white starts experiencing some troubles on the 6th move in the game, which is very good for us. Let's also analyze the line e takes d5. Of course, white can play it. Now black has two main options. You can take with a knight or with a queen. You're never gonna take on a d5 with a pawn. Well, in this position it's simply impossible, but anyway, you don't want to take with a pawn because it would block your thin shadowed bishop on the b7. So you can choose between knight and queen. Knight take is possible and it's quite okay, but white will play bishop d2 and nothing bad happens with white, so I advise that you take with a queen. If possible, why not to bring your most powerful piece into action? Now you put pretty strong pressure onto this long diagonal. Most likely there will be white's king there after his castling, and you've got a good position. Let's say white castles. And now there is one most precise way which can help you to equalize the position immediately. First you take onto c3, d takes, and here, of course, you can castle, that's possible. That will lead to a complicated middle game position, but in a middle game white has some chances for an attack and for an active play. Again, I don't say that white has an advantage here, but anyway, there is a little risk for you here. And if you want to equalize the position completely, you can go queen h5. Now black is intending to take onto f3, breaking up the white's pawn structure, and even in an endgame, this will be a huge problem for white, because you will jump with your knights and attack all those pawn islands. Most probably white will decide to prevent it and play something like knight e5. After that you trade off the queens, neutralizing any possibilities for the white's future attack. Then you go with castling. The next move you'll probably go knight b to d7 to neutralize an active knight on the e5, and everything is very good, position is equal, and moreover in the future you've got a chance to attack white's weak pawns. You can jump with your knight to e4, to d5, maybe you can push c5 and bring your rook into play over this c file, and all in all your plan is to attack white's weak pawns. So white has no real chance for an attack, while you can attack his weaknesses. As you can see, everything is good. e4, b6, d4, bishop b7. Now we'll analyze one more side variation here. Knight f3, bishop b4, bishop d3, and knight f6. The e4 pawn is under an attack, and previously we analyzed the variation queen e2. Also, white can simply push this pawn forward by playing e5. At first glance it looks like a good and aggressive idea, but in fact it rather helps black. First, it opens the long diagonal for black's light square bishop. Secondly, and now black can move his knight forward to the e4, which is the most aggressive square, and make troubles for white, taking that knight onto c3. Thus, in fact, the e5 move helped black to gain in activity. Lastly, an advancement of the white center makes it more vulnerable, more exposed, and in the future it'll be easier for black to undermine this center. In the future, black can easily play d6 or maybe c5 and attack this center straight away. Okay, now let's think about this position. White doesn't really want to take on to e4, because in this case he'll lose his light square bishop, He'll have no chances for an attack on the king side in the future, and everything is just great for black. That's why white will probably go bishop d2. What should black do in such a situation? You should take the bishop. That's very good for you. You'll take an advantage of two bishops, neutralize one of the white's most active pieces, and potentially the white's two bishops can be very dangerous for you. So it's a good idea to trade off one of them or both of them. That's why black should take knight takes d2. You're never gonna take on the c3 with a knight, because in this case white will get an extra tempo after b takes c3 and he'll get a comfortable position. If you really want to trade off a pair of pieces, you should start from bishop takes c3. In this case, you can take on the c3 with the bishop first, and on the next move you can trade your knight for an opponent's bishop and simplify a position. If that is your purpose, you can use this way. But the proper way is knight takes d2, just exchanging the white's bishop. White takes with the queen, and now there is also a pleasant choice for you. First of all, you can make a standard move d6, and then maybe take an e5, maybe increase the pressure with knight b to d7. Oh, not knight b, simply knight to d7. As you can see already, it's very difficult for white to keep his central pawns. You have two bishops, and both of them are very active, and put pressure on the white's position. And you already have more initiative position, and it's more pleasant to play it for black. This is one and standard way. Another way which you can use in this particular position is to take onto f3, disrupting white's pawns. G takes, then you go knight c6, attacking this pawn on the d4. White will protect it somehow, and the best way is to go bishop e4. And after that, you'll prepare long castling. You don't want to castle kingside because here white can attack you using a semi-open g file. So you move your queen to the most active square h4, and on the next move, let's say after white's castling, you will also castle queenside and get a very good position. Generally, it's, well, we may say that it's a bit symmetric, but you have much more solid pawn structure, and all your pieces are pretty active. In the middle game, you will attack the white center and the white's weak pawns on the king side. As you can see, white has quite a lot of weaknesses. You can push the d pawn to d5, forcing an exchange of the white's e pawn and attacking the white center. You can push f5 or maybe f6, also attacking the white center from this wing. You can move your knight maybe to e7 and then somewhere to d5 or f5, but it's an additional resource. Of course, you shouldn't do it without any real reasons. All in all, your position is very good. Black already has an advantage, and everything is great. Now we know that the white's seemingly active move e5 rather helps black to attack, and also makes the white's position more insecure. Another option white can play to somehow protect his e4 pawn is a move bishop g5, pinning your knight on the f6. It's also not that great idea for white, and black gets a favorable position easily. First you go h6. So far black is attacking by his every move, and that's great. White can't really retreat with a bishop, because in that case, after bishop h4 and g5 and bishop g3, white will lose his pawn on the e4. Black got an active position, and white can't take the knight because of the pin. That's why after h6, white has to trade off his bishop and take on the f6. Now black can simply recapture with the queen, but I advise that you make an in-between move bishop takes c3 first. You see, there is no other idea how you can use your bishop on the b4, thus you'll have to take on c3 sooner or later anyway. And it's better to do it right now, because if you take an f6 first, white can play queen d2 and keep his pawn structure intact. However, you can make an intermediate move, bishop takes c3 check, breaking the white's pawns, and after that you take on f6. Now, you are not afraid of the white's move e5. We already know that very often it rather helps black. It opens a diagonal for your bishop, and in this position you can play queen f4, or you can even take an f3 right now. Bishop takes f3, making a counterblow. It also works well for black. That's why we don't afraid of this move. If white makes something ordinary, like castling, then you can also castle or go d6, and generally your idea is to castle and then play e5. Then you'll place your pawns on the right squares, on the right color. Having a light squared bishop, you want to put your pawns on the dark color. Also, this will blockade the white's e4 pawn and indirectly his light squared bishop. And black get a stable positional advantage and a lasting initiative. This is, of course, a very advantageous situation for you. After that, you'll develop your knight on the d7 or on the c6. This is your plan, everything is simple, and you get a favorable situation. This video turns out to be quite long, so let's pause it here. Of course, later on I'll record a continuation where we will analyze all the remaining variations. In the meanwhile, you may try it out in your practical games. Why not? You're already aware of all the main ideas and variations, and your preparation is definitely much better than your opponent's. Also, if you haven't seen my video about b3 opening for white, I recommend that you do it now. Of course, the ideas of playing b3 for white or b6 for black are very similar. Thus you can expand your knowledge and get a universal and really well prepared opening which you can use in your any game, whatever color you are playing. You can find a link for the b3 video below this video, and it will be useful to repeat it even if you have seen it previously. Don't forget to let me know about your results, you can write them in comments. Thanks for watching and have a good day. I'll talk to you next time in the next video.